From the Grayman Briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more. Now, for your situational awareness, Super Essie will be reading out the latest update. Get briefs sent in real time at graymanbriefing.com. That's Gray with an A. Let's get into it.
Okay, we've got so very much to cover today. I'm going to give you a breakdown overview of the assassination attempt on former President Trump. We'll do that at the end of this broadcast. Let's cover some of the other briefings from the Grayman Briefing, and then we will end with that attempt on Trump's life. So, speaking of, all charges related to that classified documents case against Trump have been dismissed by the judge in Florida. The case was dismissed due to an unlawful appointment and funding of special counsel Jack Smith and his investigation. The DOJ is appealing. Let's move into global conflict. On July 8th through the 9th, Ukraine's defense minister ordered all Ukrainians in Europe to join in Poland to form the Ukrainian Legion. This unit is expected to be armed by Western countries and comes following the launch of multiple ballistic and cruise missiles fired by Russia against Ukrainian targets on July 8th. The creation of this military unit was announced by the president there, Zelensky, during a meeting with Polish Prime Minister Tusk on July 9th. The Russian missile attack caused significant damage, including to a children's hospital. Reports indicate at least 170 were injured, 37 killed, including children. Ukrainian air defense systems reportedly intercepted 8 of 38 missiles. The announcement of the Legion also addresses the draft dodging highlighted during April after that conscription age was lowered from 27 to 25 due to war casualties. Also, on July 8th, Belarus and China commenced joint airborne assaults, river crossings, and residential area combat in Belarus near the Polish border. The Belarus Ministry of Defense claims the first-of-its-kind cooperation will enhance the operational capabilities and bilateral defense ties with China. The joint training exercise called Eagle Assault 2024 comes the same week as that large-scale missile attack on Ukraine by Russia, and as NATO convened in Washington, D.C. to discuss further support for Ukraine. Moving into government oversight, anonymous U.S. soldiers at Fort Liberty, which was Fort Bragg, in North Carolina, they shared an image of a PowerPoint presentation listing pro-life organizations as terrorist groups. The presentation was given by the Directorate of Emergency Services under the United States Army Installation and Management Command. Operation Rescue and the National Right to Life organizations were specifically mentioned as terror groups in this training session given to U.S. Army soldiers. Following the leak of that image on social media, Fort Liberty released a statement clarifying that the slides were not vetted by appropriate authorities and do not reflect the views of Fort Liberty, the U.S. Army, or Defense Department. So probably wouldn't have had that clarification had it not gone viral, because it probably did represent their views. Moving into cybersecurity, the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance has identified and condemned a group of Chinese hackers known as Advanced Persistent Threat 40 or APT-40 for conducting cyber espionage activities against allied nations. These hackers, backed by the Chinese Communist Party, have been targeting critical infrastructure and government entities. Australia has taken the lead in attributing ATP-40 to these attacks, and they've been assisted by Japan and South Korea, which is kind of unusual. The U.S. recently sanctioned a similar threat group, APT-31, and charged 7 individuals associated with these cyber attacks. The UK, Australia, and New Zealand have reported increased cyber activities linked to the CCP. Moving on, under cybersecurity, the U.S. government and global officials have warned of the emergent threat of quantum computing and the risk of all encrypted data being breached by 2030 using quantum computing unless action is taken. The White House's Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technology warned that cryptographically relevant quantum computers, known as CRQCs, may be operational in less than 6 years, and warned that their threats to national security and the commercial sector are real. The United Kingdom's National Cybersecurity Center, the NCSC, also warned that threat actors may already be storing encrypted data with the intent to decrypt it once CRQCs evolve. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, known as NIST, is developing cryptographic systems resistant to both quantum and classical computers to prepare for these potential threats. The initiative involves evaluating draft standards such as the Crystals Dilithium and the Crystals Cyber to ensure digital communication security. The new standards aim to protect against quantum computing threats. Organizations are urged to adopt these standards to safeguard sensitive data from future quantum decryption threats. Of note, a tech firm known as PsiQuantum expects to begin using fault-tolerant quantum computers by 2027 for commercial purposes. So this all could come really in the next 3 years. Moving on cybersecurity, a group of hackers identifying as gay furry hackers has claimed responsibility for breaching the Heritage Foundation systems in a protest against Project 2025. The hacker group, led by SiegeSec, conducted the attack as part of the Ops Trans Rights campaign, calling the Heritage Foundation's initiative an authoritarian Christian nationalist plan to reform the U.S. government. The group has accessed and released unclassified data from that organization. And now moving into censorship, bias, and privacy. On July 12th, Meta, that's Facebook and Instagram, they announced they would stop their censorship efforts against former President Trump on social media accounts. So Trump was removed from Facebook and Instagram in 2021 after Meta took action against him for his alleged involvement in the events on January 6th. His accounts were later reinstated in 2023, but with added guardrails. Meta stated that the American people should be able to hear from the nominees for president on the same basis, so Trump will no longer be subject to those heightened suspension penalties and guardrails. So now we're kind of caught up with everything else that most of everything else that the Grayman Briefing covered. We're going to now move into that breakdown overview of the assassination attempt on former President Trump, but I wanted to give a quick shout out here. Super Essie, as you know, partnered with Grayman Briefing, and together we've written a new book. It's the Hip Pocket Brief Volume 3. So we've published 3 books now. This is the 3rd one that just dropped. So what it is, it's a pocket-sized booklet. Fits in your pocket. You can take it out anytime you want. Each page covers a different topic. There are 40 topics in the book. It's all about survival, security, preparedness, awareness, communication, defense, threat avoidance. Some examples of the topics in Volume 3 are tourniquet staging, law enforcement avoidance, lockpicking, electronic device security, off-grid solar setups, neighborhood defense planning, creating an intel briefing, and navigation without GPS, among others. If you're interested, go to hip.graymanbriefing.com and pick up a book. So now let's go ahead and move into that overview. So in Butler, Pennsylvania, on July 13th, an assassination attempt on former President Trump failed after as many as 11 shots were fired. 1 bullet struck Trump's face, particularly his ear. You could see blood on it as it happened. In total, 5 people were shot, including Trump and the shooter. 2 people were killed. That was a bystander and the shooter, which we'll refer to as shooter number 1. Not that the Grayman Briefing is saying there was more than 2 shooters, but we'll just keep it at that for now. 2 bystanders were injured. 1 bystander was killed. Trump was injured. The suspect, the murderer, he was killed. Trump was escorted by the Secret Service, kind of appeared sloppily. They kept him on stage for quite a while before moving him down. There's a lot of stuff on social media about some of the female Social Security. Did I say Social Security? I think I mean Secret Service. I have SS here on my notes, and I guess I just read into that. So this all happened at a political rally where about 15,000 people were in attendance. Trump was transported to a nearby medical facility. Obviously, as you know, if you're following the news, he is fine, only suffered that 1 minor injury. The Pennsylvania State Police advised that it was a chaotic scene and that there was a variety of crimes that were committed. Pennsylvania is the primary investigative agency on those other assaults, and as well as that murder of the bystander, and the FBI is lead on the assassination attempt. They said at this time it's too early to call it a lone wolf attack. Later on, a 20-year-old white male named Thomas Matthew Crooks was officially identified as shooter number one. The Grayman Briefing is probably one of the few calling it shooter number one. So if I accidentally say suspect or just shooter, just keep in mind they're referencing him as shooter number one. Another person named Maxwell Urick was initially a name floated around as a possible suspect. There's nothing out there confirming that. There's a lot of people looking at the facial similarities between him and the deceased shooter, but for now all we have is Crooks. And keep in mind, I'm reading through these updates as they came through the briefing, so a lot of them, not that they're out of order, but it was as information was being gathered. So I'll kind of jump around, so bear with me here. So parallels have been drawn between claims of how Trump incited the events of January 6th and how Biden may have incited this assassination attempt. Biden earlier in the week said, quote, "I have one job, and that's to beat Donald Trump. I'm absolutely certain I'm the best person to be able to do that. So we're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in the bullseye." He also said his strategy going forward, appearing to relate to that debate, was to, quote, attack, 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 and said, "I'm going to beat Trump, I promise you." Earlier on July 13th, Biden called Trump a loser. His pinned social media post labels Trump as a dictator, saying we must stop him. So you're going to have those parallels drawn. Did Biden or other media or Democrats incite this? So whatever. Explosives were located in the shooter's vehicle near the campaign rally. Bomb-making materials were found at his house following a search warrant service. Shooter number one was a registered Republican. His parents were registered Democrats. Shooter number one donated only once, and only to a Democrat campaign, the Biden Act Blue Progressive Turnout Project. The firearm used was described as a Defense Procurement Manufacturing Services, that's DPMS, AR-15 5.56 with possibly a EOTech sight on it. The rifle belonged to his father and was bought in 2013. There are a lot of claims out there linking the shooter to multiple Antifa groups and reports he participated in the Antifa BLM protest in Minneapolis in 2021, Portland in 2022, and Seattle in 2023. The GBC, that's the Grayman Briefing Classified, they haven't independently verified any of these connections to Antifa or any protest, and it appears they're kind of all made up at this time unless you guys have other information. Reliable sources indicate that the USSS, that's the U.S. Secret Service, Director Kim Cheadle, who many say was a DEI hire, has denied multiple requests for additional security for President Trump. Cheadle is close friends with Joe Biden, and she last worked security at Pepsi, the soda, the Coke, the cola company, but also she obviously served with the Secret Service. Antifa affiliate John Brown Club called the failed assassination a worst-case scenario. Far-left activists and social media expressed their disappointment over the failed assassination attempt. The Biden campaign has suspended and recalled advertising, including those bus wraps that were supposed to be there at the RNC over the week. President Biden commented on the assassination, saying, "We don't," this is quote, "we don't yet have any information about the motive of the shooter. We know who he is. I urge everyone, please don't make assumptions about his motives or his affiliations. Let the FBI do their job," end quote. The FBI commented on the attempt, saying, "Our number one goal here," this is a quote, "is to identify the motive of the subject and determine whether he had any other associates or anyone else that was involved at this point. The investigation, it appears that he was a lone actor, but we still have more investigation to go. We are investigating this as an assassination attempt, but we are also looking at it as potential a domestic terrorist act." Trump advised, well, that's getting into the RNC. We won't go into that. So shooter number one was positioned on the AGR building. That's the American Glass Research International Incorporated building. Everyone's got different amount of feet and yards. Seems like about 390 feet is the standard of what most analysts are projecting. So 390 feet from Trump is where the shooter was positioned. Shooter number 1 fired at least 8 bullets. According to most assessments, those shots impacted 4 people and a hydraulic component on a tractor or crane that began spraying fluid after shots were fired. Audio forensic analysis indicate there were 11 shots fired in under 16 seconds. 8 shots from the same firearm were fired first, between the initial all the way to 5.4 seconds in, and that's a high confidence assessment. 2 more shots occurred at the 5.8 and 5.9 second marks. They happen almost simultaneously. The audio differs between the two, suggesting these 2 shots were from either a second or third firearm. Not high confidence on that. A final audible shot occurs at the 15.8 second mark, and it matches the sound of the second firearm. Official reports say there were shots fired all the way into like the 26 second mark, but we weren't able to corroborate that. At least the briefing wasn't. The takeaway of the unreliable precursory analysis suggests there were 3 shooters, with at least 1 being a suspect and 1 being law enforcement, the sniper that took him out. So, yeah. There are accounts that the officer who attempted to intervene, so like I said, we're skipping around here, but bear with me. So an officer attempted to intervene. He fell. Initially, they said he was climbing up a ladder, and that the shooter, number 1, aimed his rifle at him, and he, quote, retreated. We're going to jump into that later where they dig into it a little bit more. So I'm kind of bouncing around here at the notes. Give me 1 second. So the AGR building was designated as a vulnerability by the Secret Service. There were reported 3 counter sniper teams inside that building, with at least 1 being fielded by local law enforcement. I think later we determined they were all local law enforcement inside. Also of note, local law enforcement said they did not have the manpower to secure that building, and the Secret Service is seems like pretty much like, okay, well, do what you can sort of deal. All 3 of these counter sniper teams that were in the building appeared to have a line of sight on the shooter's location, or at least the other sniper teams had a line of sight on him. So the shooter was positioned behind the lip of that southern AGR building, out of sight of at least one of the snipers, possibly either because of the lip of the roof or because of a tree. There was a nearby water tower beside the AGR PVA. It was seemingly an unused vantage point, but later you'll see video that appears to show a figure on top of the tower. Of course, the only video of that is too blurry to confirm if there was anyone on the tower, so the concept thought here is that there was no one on the tower. But you guys can view that video if you look on the briefing. On the same day, July 13th, a separate political event in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where First Lady Biden spoke to about 200 supporters, occurred, and then another event in Philadelphia where Vice President Harris was speaking to about 1,200 supporters occurred. Some people have blamed that you've got 3 events in Pennsylvania in the same state, all requiring Secret Service, could have detracted or stretched the staff thin. One former Secret Service official did advise that that played an impact or played a role in the ability for Secret Service to have enough staff on hand for Trump's rally. A current USSS official commented on the other 2 concurrent political events that took place and said it, quote, could have been thinned out from multiple events. With that said, the VP and certainly FLOTUS will almost always have a much smaller footprint than a Trump rally site. Moving back into shooter number 1, he graduated from high school in 2022. He appeared in a BlackRock commercial that was filmed at the high school in 2022. He received an associate's degree from community college in 2024. There are videos that are said to be from February 2020 where someone appearing to look like Crooks went on a rampage of just yelling at everyone, saying "slash Republican throats." He was screaming. This happened at Arizona State University. This does not appear to be Crooks. If it was from 2020, he would have short hair, but the video shows someone with long hair. It's too blurry to get a close-up look. Doesn't appear to be him. Okay, so that iconic sniper team you see in you're seeing everywhere online. The one who was positioned over Trump's right shoulder. One of the snipers posted on 4chan, supposedly one of the snipers did. He identified himself as Jonathan Willis. He says that he was told to hold fire, to stand down, not to shoot, which many are saying, if that's true, they were kind of wanting the shooter number one to shoot and kill Trump before Secret Service intervened. Yeah, there's no evidence to this. Not that this isn't Jonathan Willis. We spoke to one member of the Secret Service and said that no, that there's no Willis, and we don't know who this guy is that's pretending to be Willis. But we have another reliable source that says they've actually spoken with Willis, and so we're still fielding out this theory. Did someone tell Secret Service to stand down or to wait? I don't know if we'll ever fully know that, but the briefing will definitely follow up if anything else is found out regarding that. Moving on, the FBI announced that it gained access to the shooter number one's cell phone. A laptop was recovered from the shooter's house, an IED or parts thereof, and of course that rifle was recovered from there at the scene. They were brought to Quantico for further analysis. Investigators found 3 IEDs, including 2 in the shooter's vehicle or house, at least one in the vehicle anyway, according to a bulletin published by the DHS. A remote transmitter was found with shooter number one. The FBI is reporting that shooter number one also posted on Steam in the days prior, writing, July 13th will be my premiere. Watch as it unfolds, end quote. The FBI says they have reviewed his phone and laptop and claim they have not revealed any ideology yet. A second phone containing 27 contacts was also recovered and identified as shooter number one's secondary phone. It's also reported shooter number one visited the rally grounds twice before the rally, including once that morning when he was possibly hiding the rifle for later use. It's been confirmed that 3 loaded magazines were also recovered on the scene, and they reportedly belonged to the shooter, obviously, and body armor was found in his vehicle on scene. The suspect, shooter number one, obviously, is who I keep trying to say. Instead, I say suspect because it's worded differently wherever I'm looking. He visited a gun range in the days before the assassination attempt. He purchased 50 rounds of ammunition from a firearms retailer in Bethel Park just prior to the shooting. I believe it was the same day. The director of the Secret Service said, quote, the shooter was actually identified as a potential person of suspicion. Unfortunately, with the rapid succession of how things unfolded, by the time that individual was eventually located, they were on the rooftop and were able to fire off at the former president, end quote. She also admitted it was intentional to not post law enforcement or Secret Service on the AGR building, saying that it, quote, in particular, has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside. End quote. Them slopey roofs. There were 3 snipers. So earlier I talked about this and I was kind of jumping out of order. So I think here we've got a better summary. So there were 3 snipers positioned inside the AGR building. One of the snipers in the building observed the suspect from a raised position. It's reported the officer saw the suspect looking up at the roof, then holding a rangefinder. An officer, supposedly this sniper, took a photo of the suspect from that raised position. That information was immediately radioed to the command post. The suspect continued to enter and leave the view of officers and was seen again for a 3rd time with a backpack walking towards the back of that AGR building. Local officers responded and tried to get on the roof. The Butler County Sheriff said, quote, the officer had both hands up on the roof to get up onto the roof, never made it because the shooter had turned towards the officer, and smartly, the officer let go. So this is what was happening here, that they said the officer was hoisted up on another officer's shoulders, and he had his hands up on the edge of the roof where the gutter would be. And that's when he looked up and the shooter was aiming his rifle at him. Officer's unable to hang from the roof and pull a gun out at the same time and shoot. He fell backwards. He fell down 8 feet to the ground, at least 8 foot from where he was standing on the officer's shoulders. let's see where we're at here. Local law enforcement advised that the Secret Service, they did not have enough resources to secure the AGR building and grounds prior to this event. So Secret Service obviously knew that was a vulnerability. In a reported phone call between the Secret Service director and U.S. senators who were inquiring into the incident, it was revealed that a Secret Service counter sniper observed the shooter. Now here's the biggest thing out of everything I'm telling you. Listen to this. So a counter sniper with the Secret Service observed shooter number 1 on the roof of the AGR building at 5:52 p.m. So of note, Trump stepped on the stage at 6:02 p.m. So think about the timeline there. 10 minutes prior to Trump even coming out, sniper saw the shooter on the roof. And of note also, the shooting actually began at 6:11 p.m. So 20 minutes prior, they knew he was on the roof. Yeah. No one stopped the shooter. No one said, hey, let's not let Trump come out yet. They let him come on out. We're jumping around a little bit here, but shooter number 1 was identified as a suspicious person over an hour before the shooting occurred. So he was identified at 5:10 p.m. The shooting happened at 6:11 p.m. He was photographed at least 20 minutes prior. There's a lot of conflicting reports there about when the photograph happened. Jumping around also here, the Federal Aviation Administration confirmed that Secret Service did not apply for a special government interest waiver to fly surveillance drones over the rally event. So we don't really know if the Secret Service had drones. I guess they could have and not done it rightfully. But you think you would want drones there for that. Viral images of the counter sniper team on the roof over Trump's right shoulder have been confirmed as not firing on shooter 1. These are those that are said to thought they were taking fire. Someone said, quote, flinched. A separate counter sniper team identified as local law enforcement by many sources has been confirmed as the team that took the kill shot. I believe the counter sniper teams were using larger caliber rounds, and this local team was using smaller rounds. I don't know what it was. I think the briefing may have posted it. Maybe it was 5.56 or something. So in all engagements with the shooter, it was local law enforcement who tried to get up on that building, the AGR building, were hanging by the gutter, fell down, and then a local counter snipers that took the kill shot. So the Secret Service did not intervene. Let's see where we're at now. So Iran has denied involvement in the assassination attempt after U.S. officials released claims, probably I think it was like the day after this happened, that there were new threats being planned on Trump's life by Iran. Social media, intel personalities and groups are assessing there's a third shooter, or I should say a second shooter, that was present either on the water tower or in that grass berm, the tree line behind the stage. A compelling video that I actually watched myself shows a man reacting to something like either almost being shot. So this man reacts, then right after a woman who's holding a purse, the purse gets moved like something shot it, and then in the same line of direction with the man, the purse, then you see the bullet making contact with something, all in the same horizontal line, which if you follow that horizontal line, it goes towards somewhere between the water tower and that grassy berm I was talking about, which does complement the idea there could have been a second shooter. So yeah, this is a lot of stuff, and by the time this post, there could be so much more information out, but we're just covering what I found on the briefing as of the time I was recording this. So it's been sporadic. I've tried to recap everything I could using the updates that were published in real time as the information came out. You can see all these updates and view the sources, the videos, the diagrams that accompany them, as well as other in-depth coverage of the other briefs we mentioned just prior to this by going to graymanbriefing.com. Due to time constraints and the risk of censorship, we can't cover it all here. The Grayman Brief is open to the public on Instagram and Telegram. Give them a follow, comment either there or here on the broadcast or their socials. Thanks for listening. Make sure you guys remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.
Get unredacted, real-time briefings sent via email and through the Telegram and Signal apps by joining the Grayman Briefing.